Thank everyone for coming out tonight. My name is Alyssa Klaus, and I'm the director of the Meadows Museum of Art. If you're a St. Mary's student and need passport points, be sure that you sign in at the front desk before you leave tonight. Thank you for joining us tonight for the previous live performance, if you were able to make it, and now the Artist Talk by Craig Colorusso for his exhibition, Sound and Light. Craig's exhibition sits at the intersection of sound, light, and space through sculpture. Working with these concepts since 2000, his installations consist of wood, metal, fabric, and electronics. 3 works have been on display in our galleries over the last 2 months. Cube Music consists of 6 4-foot aluminum cubes with geometric cutout shapes, each containing a light and sound source that grow and decay at different intervals, fading into each other over time. A Wash is an interactive digital piece. Using smartphones, visitors can add to the low hum of the room to create a unique experience. At the end of tonight's talk, everyone will be invited to go upstairs and participate in a wash. Finally, Install is a short film produced by Kevin Belli about Craig, his life, his influences, and his sound and light works. A 4th piece, Sunboxes, has been exhibited outdoors around St. Mary's campus this semester. Sunboxes is comprised of 20 solar-powered speakers, each playing a different note that collectively makes the B chord, overlapping and looping to slowly evolve over time. Sunboxes have been a particular favorite of the campus community this semester, with multiple requests by staff and faculty for us to keep them for forever or for them to take them home. But unfortunately, they will be leaving with the rest of Sound and Light at the end of the day tomorrow. But tonight, we are lucky to have the artist here to speak about his work. While on campus today, Craig has met with studio art, arts management, and music technology students. And tomorrow at noon, he will be providing live music for a public yoga event in McGill Library with St. Mary alumna AJ Haynes. This event is free and open to the public if anyone is interested in joining, but we do request that you bring your own yoga mat, towel, or blanket for yoga. So please join me in welcoming Craig.
Hi, thanks for coming. So my earliest recollection of sound, I was a kid, and I remember my mother was cleaning the house, and I would harmonize with the vacuum, a chorus of E's, O's, and U's. And when my voice was in tune, my whole body would vibrate. And instantly, music went from something that I heard with my ears to something that I felt in my bones. And I have not been able to shake that since. Honestly, I feel like in many ways, I'm trying to recreate that experience over and over again. And so, fast forward to age 14, my best friend then, still my best friend now, Ryan Blessy, he was 3 days older than me, and he was like, hey man, you're kind of weird. Girls are not going to like you. You should probably play guitar. It might help. Implying that it also might not. But since he's 3 days older than me, I took his advice and I started playing guitar, and it was awesome. It was like life-changing. And no disrespect to all the beautiful women in the world, it just seemed more powerful than trying to find a mate. But that also worked too. I had a great time, and then I started, I was listening to all the biggies like Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, AC/DC, Van Halen. I was 14 years old in 1984, and that record just rocked my world. But then I found punk rock, and it was game-changing. Like the music, I was craving something more exciting, and I found it in punk rock. The Clash, the Ramones, the Sex Pistols. And then even more specifically, I found hardcore. And that to me was amazing because now I was able to participate in music as opposed to looking at it like history. Because by the time I heard Led Zeppelin, they'd already broken up. And so now I could go see a band at the Anthrax in Norwalk, Connecticut, and then the next day I could buy the record from Trash American Style in Brookfield, Connecticut. I could participate in this music of the moment as it was happening. And that really kind of shaped everything for me. Like now all of a sudden I'm not listening to music, I'm not a spectator anymore, I'm actually doing this. So then I would say I fast forward, I got into a couple bands, toured the country, and it was awesome. I absolutely loved it. I have a huge ego, so I like being on stage. It was a perfect fit, but my mind began to wander, a common theme throughout my life. I remember specifically I was in a band called China Pig and we were on tour and I was like, this is cool, but there's always going to be that barrier between the audience and the performer, and I wanted to make something that didn't have that. And so the first thing I did was I made cue music, and that really kind of satisfied that barrier, because it just, as soon as you hear it or see it, you're part of it, and you decide what you want to do with it. And all of a sudden, once again, it just changed everything. I felt like at that point, I was seeking permission to do things. And after doing cue music, the question wasn't who's going to allow me to do this. The question was who is going to stop me. I felt very empowered by these boxes and this light. And so I just kept going. And so then I made Sunboxes. Sunboxes in 2009, my really good friend, Sexy David Sanchez, called me up and he's like, yo, make something solar, we're going to the desert, and he just hung up. A quick backstory with Dave. China Pig was on tour in 1995, and he had a gallery called the Citizens Gallery. I knew him through a friend of mine. She said, hey, there's this cool guy named Dave Sanchez, he's booking shows, you should reach out to him. We hit it off. This is back when people would mail tapes. That's how long ago it was. He agreed, he liked the music, he said, great, come, I'll pay you, it'll be awesome. So we down there, we played, and it was a pretty good show. Sometimes the China Pig shows went a little bit off the rail, but this was a great one. Anyway, I'm like loading stuff into the car, and the drummer in China Pig's like, hey man, I think you need to go in there, something's going down. And so I go in, and I get ushered into like this other room, and there are all these upper echelon like fire dudes. Turns out Twisters was a local rock club, and they were feeling like Dave was taking away from their business, so they got their friends in the police and fire department to come and shut it down. And so Dave was cited for tax evasion and some kind of fire code. And then they realized people were living there illegally. And so it was just chaos. So everything was being moved out into the street. I'm being interrogated by these fire dudes, and they're like, okay, what was the money exchange? I said, well, I don't really know Dave. It's sort of just a pass the hat kind of thing, very cool. And he's like, well, thank you for coming to Richmond. Please come back. So I get out of there. I finally find Dave. He's like, hey man, you guys were great. Listen, all my stuff's in the street. I'm going to jail, but here's the money I owe you. I lied to the fire guy. It's on tape now. And so I thought, man, any guy that gives me money on his way to jail is a friend for life. So back to 2009, Sexy David Sanchez is on the phone, you take the call. So he and I and this other guy, Richard Vossler, we went out to Rhyolite, Nevada, and we made art using sustainable energy, and Sunboxes was my contribution. I think Sunboxes, once again, was just exactly what I needed. I was able to travel all over the country with the Sunnies and meet people. And, Sunboxes is an interesting scenario because people feel very comfortable. And then they start to tell me things that people don't normally tell strangers. And I think what I realized with Sunboxes is that I've met a lot of amazing people that have amazing stories. They just don't have anybody to tell them to. I think sometimes, being an adult is a lonely place. And so I feel like, Sunboxes has given me the opportunity to be a good listener and just listen to people's stories. And so for that, I am forever thankful. And also, it sort of dealt with that audience idea. You know, Sunboxes is just this thing, and as soon as you see it or hear it, you decide where you want to go, and it's been great. The first time we did it in Rhyolite, Nevada, people came from 2 miles away because they heard it. The sound just traveled, and they were like, oh my God, we have to hear what this thing is. And then they came, and I think they were disappointed that there was no like power line down or like a UFO or anything, but they liked it anyway. Okay, so moving forward, all these things have been temporary. Then I started to do permanent pieces. And I would say I love the idea of a permanent piece. I think I just want to set this up and just let it go and see what happens. And so I have 5 pieces in Northwest Arkansas, all throughout the area there. I have a new piece in Annapolis, Maryland. And it's been awesome. I do like to travel and I do like the temporary stuff, but there's something kind of interesting about creating something and letting it have like a life of its own. I would say that I want to do it all. I want to perform music, I want to do temporary pieces, and I want to do permanent pieces. And so I will probably continue doing that until I have to make a choice. I don't know, choices, right? Does anybody have any questions? Yes?
What pieces do you have in Northwest Arkansas? And where, if I can ask? I went to school up there for a little bit.
Oh, okay.
In Fayetteville.
There, I have 2 pieces in Fayetteville. One is called Sound Swings. It is 3 swings that play music as you swing on them. And the idea is that when you get off the swing, it'll pause in the program, and then when someone gets back on, it'll resume. And if you were to play all 3 swings simultaneously, the piece would last 55 days. But with people coming and going, I think the possibilities are infinite. I love Fayetteville. I live in Rogers, which is 2 towns up. And also in Fayetteville, I have a piece called Wilson Circle, which is 6 4x4 uprights that cast shadows in this place called Wilson Preserve. And it plays music for sunrise and sunset.
How long have those been there?
I think the Sound Swings were there in 2018, and I think Wilson Circle was maybe 2020. I'm not sure.
I feel like I might have seen the swings. I went to school there in 2017 through 2020.
Okay,
Yeah, so I feel like I might have seen them whenever you mentioned that. But
I'll ask them.
sure, yeah.
They'll remember you.
They probably will.
And then there's a thing called the Razorback Greenway, and there's another place. It's all this like mountain biking stuff, and then there's the Colorusso Mountain Biking Preserve. And so there are 2 bridges that I have 2 pieces that make sound there, and that's awesome. There's no sign, and so sometimes people are like, "Oh my God, did you hear that?" And like I've actually been there with my guys like replacing speakers, and I've overheard people say, oh yeah, some dude figured out like the grates and how the wind makes these vibrations, and we're like literally standing there with speakers. I'm like, no, it's not how it works, man. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, so your music,
Yes.
both the pieces upstairs and this tonight was pretty, I'm gonna call it celestial, I guess. You know.
Okay,
And,
that's a good word.
Yeah, but, so I'm curious about punk rock, that's a big span, and I'm just curious about your other pieces. Are they all sort of the tones and drums now primarily?
Yeah, I mean, I think I make, well, I do a couple different things. I definitely make compositions for music's sake, and then I do things that go with installations. It's interesting that you're trying to make the connection between the punk music. I would say it makes perfect sense in my head, but I've experienced all the million details in between. I think that what I'm trying to do now, I definitely learned the urgency from punk rock, but I want to make something that's a little more pleasant for your ears. I think, you know, when I was the singer in China Pig, I woke up one day and I thought, well, I don't have anything to say anymore, and so I stopped singing. And I think I will forever love Black Flag and Minor Threat, but at the same time, just because someone's screaming it doesn't mean they're right, and doesn't mean I want to hear it, and doesn't mean I care. And so I think maybe that's sort of like the departure for me. And also, I didn't want to be an aging punk rocker. I wanted to age gracefully, like a jazz musician, you know. But I think I learned how to play music being a punk rocker, and it was my first touring experience. I was in a band called Far Cry, and the singer lived in Newtown, Connecticut, and then he moved to Bethesda, Maryland. And he called me up one day and he's like, hey, the guitar player in my band refuses to go on tour. He's afraid his girlfriend's gonna cheat on him. Will you play on this tour? And I was like, yes, I'll be there. And you know, 3 days in, I was like, oh my God, this is really awesome. I want to do this for the rest of my life. And so I think I have a little bit of wanderlust, and I think somewhere along the way, I always equated playing music with seeing the world. And you know, my rock and roll fantasies didn't pan out, but I think I'm able to just keep it going with this. I mean, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
I mean, it's been a long haul, but I think I think I have more to do. I think I still see more ahead of me than behind me at the moment, but we'll see. I do listen to punk rock though still. I mean, I haven't thrown away all my records. And I think, you know, Henry Rollins once said, if you want to pick up something heavy, listen to Van Halen. I agree, but I listen to Black Flag, and I can lift anything. Yeah, punk rock. Anybody else have any questions? Yes.
When I was upstairs and then having just got to hear, you know, you go through that experience of what you were playing, I kept thinking about Anne Hamilton's work
Okay.
and
I'm not familiar with that.
she uses sound and imagery and light, and, you know, and words and that kind of thing. But there's this piece that she installed, I think, in Grand Central Station in New York, that had these swings, these huge swings, that like 6 people.
Okay. I think I do know who she is.
But then she's reading something, and so I think that work came to my mind, and I thought, well, what other artists are you really inspired by that do sort of this kind of work?
I would say James Turrell is a big hero of mine. I hope to do with sound what he does with light. I think in general, Stockhausen said, and he was specifically maybe attacking the conductor of the New York Philharmonic at the time, but he said, you have to decide if you want to wow people with your virtuosity, or do you want to transport them to another realm? And I would say, if that's the question, I want to go for B all day long. I would never consider myself virtuosic. I'm just uninterested. I mean, if you don't think I know how to play guitar, cool.
Right.
I mean, what am I going to do? Stop playing? I mean, that's the thing that's what punk rock. I have 0 fucks to give about anything, and I think I learned that in punk rock, and it's helped me. But I also think I want to give people an opportunity to just unravel and be present, because I feel like I need that. And I think that's sort of like where I'm headed with my work. So I would say James Turrell, definitely. I think he does a great job with minimal effort, you know, maximum return. I would say Brian Eno is a big influence. I think John Cage, I think Morton Feldman. And then I would say I really like Richard Serra. The first time I saw Richard Serra's work was in the Gagosian Gallery. A guy I was working with was like, hey, you probably like this. And I had no idea who he was. And so I walked into that little space with those giant ellipses, and it was like really amazing. So I would say I like all that stuff. And then for a while, I kind of got pulled into the dance world. I had a record that Derek Bailey did with Min Tanaka. Min Tanaka was a Buto dancer, and there was a picture of him on the cover, and he was like in this bizarre position, and I was like, oh my God, what is that? I have to know what that is. And so I started to do some research on Butoh, and then I moved to New York. I found this woman who had a company, and I joined it. And so I was performing. I took a workshop with her, and then I joined her company as a dancer, and then I actually did music. So I actually have the unique experience of dancing to my own music, and that was amazing. But it's one of those things where I got to the point where I felt like I was doing myself and Butoh a disservice. I had to either sell all my stuff and move to a farm in Japan and do it for real, or just be a fan. And so I couldn't imagine my life without a guitar, so I stayed here.
I was also thinking about the Sankei Juku company.
Big fan.
And I was listening, because their music is always so really loud
Yeah.
and immersive, just being in the theater or wherever they are. So.
Well, I also think too, like I love music, and I think I wanted to do more than just be in a band. I wanted music to be one of many elements, and I think that was kind of the attraction with dance, that like now all of a sudden, I went from like a day labor construction guy moving drywall and metal, and then all of a sudden now I'm expected to dance on how I feel. Like, what does that mean? But it was awesome, and I haven't done it in years, but I feel like it still affects me. I mean, I feel like the performance I did tonight was definitely Butoh inspired.
Indeed, absolutely. Yeah.
I did. We danced at the Brooklyn Botanic Gardens, and I remember they brought us out on these golf carts, and it was like the closest I ever felt to being Kiss, one of my favorite bands as a kid, because I had the makeup on, and we're like going to the gig, and it was awesome. And it was at the Cherry Blossom Festival, and it was just a perfect day, things in the air, and we were all painted white. It was perfect. But anyway.
I'm glad to know that.
So do you have any places online that you can see like your other works, like the videos and sounds and things like that?
Yes, I'm a YouTuber. It's just my name, I think. Did you find it? Any other questions? Yes?
Out of all the pieces that you've made, was this the most difficult to build or just like come alive? For like,
I think about these things for a long time, and I think that gives me a chance to, I don't know, work out the kinks. Like, I will forever cite Sexy David Sanchez as the catalyst for the Sunboxes, but I feel like I've been thinking about them for 20 years. And without sounding like one of those art people, like, it took me 20 years to make. I think there's some truth to that. I think those ideas, I think in general, I collect bits and pieces, and then when they make sense together, something comes out of that. And so I think for me, I just want to be open to the possibilities. And so with Sunboxes, for instance, I was thinking about it, and then the opportunity came up, and I was just able to leap into action. I have a lot of very smart friends. I use YouTube, like if I can't figure something out. I mean, I think we live in a great world in that sense. So I think everything's sort of available. But I think the swings were tough because I didn't actually build them. I had to have someone else do it. We had a bit of a time crunch. I work with a couple of guys. One guy's a programmer, another guy's an install guy. And for the thing we did in Annapolis, the turnaround time was really quick. And so we really just had to just put the pedal to the metal, but it worked out. I also maybe sometimes enjoy the chaos because it's going to happen anyway, so I might as well embrace it. Any other questions? Yes?
I was really struck with your work, how it makes this connection between the temporary and the eternal, perhaps, and the sense of eminence and the sense of transcendence. Kind of even going back to the first moment of harmonizing with the vacuum cleaner and how that's kind of been reiterated, that core presence over time. And so I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit more to how you were thinking about the relationship between time and presence through your different works.
Heavy question. I would say I'm obsessed with time. And I think I don't feel qualified to talk about the spiritual aspect of these things, but I would say that for me, that's what makes me feel the most alive is when I'm playing. Like I was talking about Mr. Blue and being trapped, I feel like my essence has always been bigger than my body, and that has been problematic throughout my life. And so I think the most I've ever felt alive is when I'm performing music. And so I think trying to create those situations for other people to be part of that. I think sound is just one of those things that for me just was magical because you can't see it, right? But it's there. And I think there's a physical aspect of it, like the vibrations that also tie into that. I think playing music, part of the desire to play music is wanting to vibrate with my instruments. And I think could be described as communing with something bigger than myself, but I don't really know. I maybe sometimes shy away from those bigger questions because I want to stick with the uncarved marble and see where that gets me. But I would say, in general, it's interesting with the temporary stuff because I think, like for instance, Sunboxes looks different everywhere it goes. But if you're there, you can have a very unique experience that will only happen there at that time. And I think that's cool, especially now the way, everything is, we share information, it's mostly cut and paste and scattered all over the place. This is a genuine thing and it doesn't even have to be shareable. It's just something that you do. I think that's maybe something, I hate to be the middle-aged guy in the crowd, but like when I see young kids with their faces glued to their devices, it just bums me out because the world is going on all around you. And I'm sorry, whatever's on that phone can't be that important. And I think for me, part of the pitch is, look, come experience this thing, leave your phone at home. It's better with friends. If you don't have a friend, go make a friend, come back. And I think for me, that's made a better life. And I think, more specifically to answer your question, isn't life just a collection of moments? And so how do we mark those moments? And for me, I'm able to mark them with sound. And for me, I'm able to almost, not necessarily mark them, but also stop time just for a second. There were moments tonight when I was playing where all of a sudden, the clock is not ticking anymore. We're not all sitting in this room, we're just here. And that's sort of the goal. And I think I'm trying to do that with the permanent and the temporary stuff as well. Does that make sense? Yeah.
You thought about the sounds you want to play at your grade?
No. I have a 10-year-old daughter. Maybe she can write a composition. I don't, I guess I don't think about stuff like that. Sorry. A part of me still feels like I'm going to live forever. Did you have a question?
Yeah, to what degree would you say that your sound and light installations are a mode of self-expression for you versus maybe getting to experience it yourself? Or is it both, or is it something else?
I would say it's definitely both, but it's also kind of like, well, it's a couple things. I need to have pause in my life. I need to have moments to unravel and feel more alive. So there's that. But there's also something like with Sunboxes. Sunboxes is a system that maybe could be summed up, maybe how the world could work better. Like the sun is here, the Sunboxes are here. Together they make this thing that I think is beautiful. Like how simple is that? Like the world could be so much more simpler than it is. But with power, money, and ego, sometimes it goes haywire. And so I think maybe sometimes with these pieces, it's more of like, how can, this is a perfect example of how things can live more harmoniously. And so I think about that maybe more so than self-expression. But I mean, self-expression is there too. I don't really think about it. I don't. I'm not that smart. I don't have time. Any other questions? All right, you want to go upstairs and?
Did you want to explain a wash down here or when we get upstairs?
Sure. Okay, quickly, a wash is a digital piece. The CEO of Spotify said that we as musicians have to evaluate our role in society in different ways. And so I took his advice. And so what you can do is you can click on the QR code, it'll bring you to a launch page, and you can pick your favorite streaming site, and then you can either play the whole playlist or pick a track and put it on repeat, and then you are part of the drone. And so you contribute to, tonight we are gonna have a unique experience that will only be for us tonight, forever. And so originally it was, there was a little bit of like sticking it to Spotify, like, okay, I'm not gonna write songs, I'm gonna do this. And then it turned into like, the practical applications of how to apply this to other things, like a dance performance. I work with a dancer who I met her in Colorado, but she lives in LA now, and she did a piece where dancers had their phones taped to their bodies, and they would play the music, and then the audience would come and they would play. And so the whole thing was different every time they did the performance. And I thought that was pretty cool. And then, the idea is like, what can we do with this? I think I would like to move my work into the wellness category. And so I think this is a possible first step of, giving people the tools to kind of create a scenario where they can feel better. And then you can take it to the next level, like in terms of like civil unrest. Like if there is some kind of riot, what if suddenly there are 20 people deployed with these sounds? I think it's very difficult to hate somebody if you hear sounds that are calming you. And I think it could possibly de-escalate a situation rather quickly. I don't know how to test that out, but it's just a thought. So anyway, yeah, we can go upstairs, click on the QR code, and be part of the drone, and then we can walk through cue music, whatever you want to do.